It's so good to be back with you all this week. I thought we'd just start by taking a minute here. Just breathing deeply, letting go of the weekend. Sometimes weekends can be quite busy. In the Bible, it speaks about Sunday being a day of rest, and most major traditions, they let go into this truth. They did at one point in history, but in 2019, it seems as if nobody stops ever. And so I'm going to invite you all just to join me in stopping. Just giving yourself full permission to completely stop. And to breathe deeply, to let go into the direct experience of what you are. If that's confusing, I'm going to invite you just to notice. Notice the silence that's here in this moment, this most holy silence. Notice the spaciousness in your room and the sky above you. And just give your nervous system permission to melt into the silence. Just notice who is here, what is here. When the mind has nothing to cling to, nothing to attach to, nothing to struggle with, if you just let it all fall away and join me in this moment, this most precious moment. Last night I was out in the middle of the Utah desert. And this great vast tract of land called Bears Ear National Monument. It's right next to Canyonlands National Park. It's one of the least populated places in the United States. And I was staring up at the huge night sky and just seeing just thousands and thousands of stars. And the Milky Way just going right across the big empty sky. And just noticing, like, who is Craig? Who am I? When there's no thoughts at all, there's just this hugeness. And so I'm going to invite you to join me in this, of just giving yourself permission not to think, not to worry, to let go of planning. If you're clicking around, let go of the clicking. So many of us, we do this. And just notice the sound of silence. As I was just sitting with this huge universe above me last night, I started to hear, it was very silent, just sound of Om, the sound of existence, just like this vibrating radiance of light and energy. And the more I just sat and didn't think about a thing, that sound of Om just got louder and louder. And they speak about this in the Bible, and they speak about this in the Hindu scriptures as well. In the beginning, there was the Word. In the beginning, there was this Om. And it doesn't sound, just like an Om that you hear in yoga class. But if you listen now, you can hear it. Just this quiet, profound sense of radiance. Like all of life radiating. The whole universe vibrating with light. And so we're giving ourselves permission to let go into this, to put everything down. This is what satsang is. It's a time to stop. Put it all down. Your worries, your struggle, your heartache, the planning, the judging, the criticizing, the becoming, and just be. Join me in this presence of beingness. And, just to be really clear here and to make sure that we're not making this too philosophical, I'm going to invite you to allow awareness to descend into the body, to feel into your heart, and notice that beingness is radiantly loving. So it's not just spacious and peaceful, it's also radiantly loving. And so as we take some deep breaths and feel into the heart, you may find this, feel this quiet presence of love. Now, if in your heart you feel a pain there, a heartache, I'm going to invite you just to open to that, to feel into that, to acknowledge that. The reason pain hurts, like heartache hurts, is because it's the opposite of truth. The truth, it always is just like silently radiating this feeling of love and openness. And when we are out of truth, we feel contraction and tension. And so your heart is always telling you, reminding you that it feels good to be in the truth, to be open, that your true nature, your original nature is openness. And so we're just feeling into this quiet radiance. A lot of us experience it as this supreme innocence. And again, when you give yourself permission to be nobody in particular, and just join me in feeling your heart, you'll notice the heart expands. The heart is silently luminous. And so we're just noticing this right here, right now. The heart is silently luminous. You feel this quiet innocence and goodness. And so the Catholic Church got confused and said that as humans, we have this original sin, but it's the opposite. As humans, your original nature is divine, is good, is precious. And so I'm going to invite you just to allow this sense of awareness to expand. So you feel spaciousness in the space of the mind. You feel this radiance throughout the heart and mind. If you take some deep breaths and just relax your solar plexus and your belly, you might feel like a quiet presence of strength, power, And so we're just feeling here, we're just opening here, we're letting go into what you are. And so we're feeling, acknowledging, and saying yes. Of course, if any of you feel like laying down and just allowing the body to melt into the floor, into your bed or the couch or whatever it is, this is also what we do at Satsang. We let ourselves melt into the direct experience of this moment. We let all tension in the body melt. All tension melt. And so anywhere within your consciousness, if you feel anything tight or tense, just take some deep breaths there and let yourself melt. Let the pelvis melt, the pelvic floor melt. The muscles in the belly melt. The tension in the chest melt. The shoulders melt. The jaw, the throat, the neck melt. Let the face melt. And then finally, I invite you just to open your crown chakra, because the other thing we do in satsang is we're meeting in this space of truth. We're inviting God to come into us, to wake us up, to wake up our original nature, but we're also inviting God to come into us to bless us and to fill us with light, to remind us that what we are is holy, what we are is divine. We often forget this here on planet Earth. We forget this. And so beautiful. So let's just rest in this space where we are receiving this grace from above. We're waking up to our true nature. We're saying, yes, what I am is good. What I am is holy. And as you notice, as you open the crown, you start to feel this love, this light pouring through you, almost like you are an empty conduit, and this grace is coming down, flooding you, nurturing you, enlivening you. And we're saying yes. Yes to the Most High. Yes to quietly receiving what's here. What's here. And so for the rest of the satsang, I'm going to invite you just to relax the body. Don't think about anything. And just receive this grace, receive this light, receive this love. Receive the hugeness of what you are and the hugeness of God pouring into you. Pouring into you. And so, it's so good to start, with a little bit of silence and going inward. Just a couple announcements that I have. I'm having a retreat this coming April. I guess April starts tomorrow. So April 25th. So it's a Thursday through a Sunday. So I think it's the 25th through the 28th. Maybe the 25th through the 29th. But just look on the website. And I'm going to invite you all to come join us. And for any of you who are struggling financially, there's scholarships available. You can just email me if you have a question about that. But it's an open door here. Be a small retreat, an intimate retreat, a time to connect deeply with yourself, with the teachings, with the Sangha. I do look forward to retreat. There's such special times when we're dedicating ourselves fully to this path. Not many of us here on planet Earth get an opportunity to stop everything and to live like a holy, a holy man or a holy woman. When I was young, I always dreamed of being a monk, and then I never fully pulled that off. I couldn't leave this world long enough. But I always dreamed of just giving myself, surrendering myself fully to this path, to this truth. And fortunately, I met a teacher who lived in the world, and so I didn't have to leave the world. But retreat is a time, just to temporarily put the brakes on everything and jump fully in. A very powerful container that comes forward, an experience that arises. So I invite you to join us for that. And then, secondly, my second announcement is I just wanted to thank everyone for the donations. If you want to make a donation, again, you can go to my website and support the Sangha, support these broadcasts. And this week, I want to thank Butch and Anna and Kristen. And, of course, thank you, Suzanne, for putting all this together. There was a number of other donations, but I don't have them right in front of me. I also want to remind everyone about my Wednesday night meditation class, and you're all welcome to join that as well. It takes a donation just to get in the door, but that's just to make sure everyone shows up on time, and so it's not just people dropping in and out. We want this weekly meditation group to be a powerful experience for you. And so you have to pre-register in advance, but don't wait till the last minute. But please join us. The people who have been coming each week have been having very powerful experiences. And they've actually been opening to this grace and this transmission. And what they've been discovering is that this transmission continues during their normal everyday life. And this is what we want, is we want to come together and open to that which is higher. But then we want this movement of grace, this movement of divinity. We want our spiritual awakening to be abiding. We don't want it just to be this temporary thing that happens for 1 hour a week. We want it to be lived, a lived experience. And so when you dedicate yourself to a path and show up on retreat and come to the weekly meditations, something powerful starts to happen in your consciousness. You're training your consciousness in being open, in being free, in being receptive, in living from the highest place. I was speaking to my daughter earlier this morning, my teenage daughter, and she told me, I was just talking to her. She went on spring break with some friends to Mexico, and I said, "You didn't take any pictures, sweetie. Why not?" And she said, "I've kind of just done with the whole phone thing." And I said, "Oh, you're not on Snapchat all day?" Because that used to be something she would do. And she said, "I just got sick of it. I got sick of it." And this is what happens in life sometimes. We train ourselves in just being busy on Snapchat or Instagram or chasing this thing or that thing. But at some point, there's something more mature within us who's just like, I'm sick of this. I'm finding it unsatisfactory, as the Buddha described. And she looked at me, she said, "Dad, it's just a waste of time." And I smiled. I said, "Okay, that's good. It's good to realize this, when we're 18 years old, that there's so much stuff that is a waste of time." But then we can ask the question an opposite way. Well, what is a meaningful use of time? How do I feel deeply connected? And for me, on the path, it was retreat, time with my teacher, our Wednesday night meditation group, the Sunday morning meditation group with my teacher. These were the times that were so meaningful. And so I committed myself to this path. I'd show up every time. Like I would literally never miss a meditation class. I had to be deathly ill, in order to not be at my teacher's house on a Wednesday night for 3 or 4 hours, for 20 years. I had to be literally deathly ill to not be there. And so we can train ourselves in the realm of truth, the realm of Dharma, or we can train ourselves in, disassociation or distraction or just being lost in cyberspace. And of course, at the end of your life, you'll know what kind of life you lived. If it was of value and of meaning, or if it was just, great distraction. A good friend of mine, I was meeting with him this week, and he's also a counselor like myself, and he was telling me about one of his clients. I do these check-ins with him, just see how his work is going, and like as a mentor. And so he was telling me one of his clients is quite old, 70 something years old, and just felt this meaninglessness about his life, and just how sad, how much remorse he had to be living a life that was not full of meaning. This is something I had a hard time imagining, because I'm flooded with meaning in my own life, because, I've made it meaningful. I don't struggle with meaning or purpose. So when you dedicate your life to your heart, to that which is holy, that which is greater, we don't struggle with confusion. We don't. We struggle with questions like, how can I serve this truth in a greater way, a fuller way? How can I love myself more? How can I heal myself in a more efficient way? How can I let go more deeply? These are our questions. So thank you all. I just want to say hello to everyone in the room, Jose and Jay and Chad and Kristen and Don. So good to see you all. And of course, Butch and Adrian, Adriana, Jem, Suzanne, Ivy, Romaine. Romaine, it's been a while. He's my French friend. Matt Bechter, it's good to see you. William, Monique, Thane, Gabriel, Mel from the land down under. So if anyone here has a question, feel free to leave it in the chat, or if you're in the Zoom program, you're welcome to ask me for the microphone. In the meantime, I have a couple questions from email. This one, let's see, this is from Anna. She writes, "Hi Craig, could you please discuss the natural ability of true nature to hold everything as love, even the resistance to something, and the subtle ways that the mind tries to get rid of or push away challenging experiences? And the mind does this either in thought experiences, or either with thought experiences or external experiences." Yeah, Hannah, though this is quite true. So as the experience of awakening deepens, at first you'll feel it often feels peaceful and spacious and transcendent. But as the experience of awakening deepens, we start to notice that the experience of awakening feels loving, that the nature of it is love. And so it's this lovely experience of feeling both spacious and loving. Now, many people on the path, they experience one or the other, but it's important to have both. When you have spaciousness and peace in your mind, you will often show up with this greater level of clarity. And when the heart is open, this clarity can help you so that you're not overwhelmed with feeling. Because as the awakening deepens into the heart, oftentimes we start to feel everything. I was speaking with someone the other day, and he was shocked by how much he was feeling, how much he was experiencing. And he started to feel quite overwhelmed with this. But when you've also realized this clarity and this spaciousness, you see there's room for this. And so you notice the love naturally embraces whatever it is we're feeling, whether it's difficult or painful or sad or beautiful. And when we have these two together, oftentimes the experience starts to deepen even further into the gut, where we feel this quiet sense of strength, this quiet sense of nobility. And when we have these three forces together, clarity, and spaciousness, this loving embrace and compassion that's not afraid, not being afraid is the third one. And then something profound starts to give birth here within us. Because then we can truly become free, truly be free, truly realize the hugeness of what we are. And yes, of course, the human mind, the remnants of it, which oftentimes there's lots of remnants in the beginning of our awakening. The human mind will try to do its old dance of seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, fighting with this or that. The human mind is wired to avoid things which are uncomfortable. But as the heart awakens, the heart is actually wired to love things which are difficult. And so it's like turning your experience, upside down. You find yourself walking into hell, walking into difficulty, instead of away from it. It's very paradoxical. And the more you walk toward pain or suffering, is the more the mind will dissolve, like that fight or flight response will dissolve. But the more you still hold on to the mind's fight or flight response, the more your mind will start to take charge of your experience again, and you'll kind of find yourself falling back asleep, in the delusion of ego. And so there's this basic movement inside. I call it basic math. If you open your heart in a loving and courageous way, your experience deepens and becomes more like a bodhisattva. But if you are a spiritual person who's kind of like a wet noodle, who doesn't want to feel anything difficult and wants to keep the room temperature just right, as my good friend was telling me, if we try to keep the temperature just right, always adjusting the thermostat, we actually give our power back to our mind, back to our ego. And so again, the opposite is true. When you're willing to sit with difficulty, what you'll find is your experience will deepen in the gut, and this quality of fearlessness will arise. Fearlessness. But we have to be willing to sit in what's called God's time. In God's time, and saying yes. Yes to that which is higher. Yes. Yes to that which is holy. Yes to that which is eternal. One of the things that happened when I was in the desert last night, I just felt just this incredible eternity. An incredible eternity. And when you let go into this, and you see the ego's idea of time, you can laugh at it. And just, it's like it's irrelevant. Irrelevant. The beautiful thing about spending time in nature, especially like the place where I was, is you could see like 21 million years of history before your eyes. I mean, hell, maybe it was even more history than that. And yet the timelessness of this present moment, the timelessness of this present moment. And see, in order to be awake, we have to let go into God's time, which is eternal. Absolutely eternal. Now, the ego would always want things, healing to be like that, to be 1, 2, 3, to be done. But God's time is eternal. You may struggle with something for many, many years. But with, true awakening, when we dedicate our life to love, to clarity, to the truth, again, time becomes irrelevant. And the more you let go into this sense that time becomes irrelevant, you'll notice the nature of your consciousness change. I know that in my own life, I literally frustrate the hell out of my wife. Because, she has, very clear understanding of time, is very linear. And oftentimes I live in a world where time doesn't exist and where, the past just it just falls away and disappears. And she's always asking me about something that happened yesterday. And with me, it just falls away. I don't know what it is that she's wanting from the past. It's like turning around and whatever it was that was there is gone. And within that, you feel the sense of freedom in that. And the freedom to let go of the past fully. And so it's like when you love something to death, it literally disappears from your consciousness. When you love an old wound to death, you don't carry around the karma of it for the next 30 years. It literally dissolves, literally. And so, yes, Anna, this is a beautiful question. She goes on to say, there seems to be this deepening of awakening that is now asking for love to be seen in every moment. It constantly asks that all spiritual concepts be let go of along with any ideas of what enlightenment is or what being free is. It's like there's no room in the mind for interference or for it to grab onto anything. And it feels extremely uncomfortable when there is a slip out of alignment. It feels uncompromising, like Kali's sword is at work. Yes, Anna, this is beautiful what you write, the way you're describing it. I love it. Sometimes when people try to speak spiritual concepts to me, and it's not rooted in direct experience, oftentimes it feels like I want to puke on my shoes. When people are speaking about experiences they want to have or that they once had a long time ago but no longer are having. And they're clinging to those old experiences. The truth lives in this moment. It's eternal. It doesn't like to talk about things which are not present. And it does. It feels like hell, like Anna's describing, when you step out of alignment. Yes, this is true awakening. The deeper the dive, the more uncompromising this truth is, as it seems to just want to be fully here in every molecule, every fiber. Yes. Yes, Anna, you wrote something beautiful. Something beautiful. And see, this is how the truth is. It is uncompromising. The ego, on the other hand, is quite compromising. One of the things the ego likes to do is just argue eternally, compromise eternally. That's how it gets or creates or fabricates its existence, is through compromising the truth. It's actually a funny dance to watch. If you stand back from your mind and just watch it, your mind can fabricate whole realities that are untrue. Whole realities that are untrue. And so thank you, Anna, for sharing. You said it better than I did, and so and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Okay, here's a question. Not exactly sure who this one is from. Oh yeah, this is from my good friend. I have a good friend from the land down under, but apparently down in Australia you do not call it the land down under. You're probably like, under what? So, and she writes, and again, this is probably more of a comment than a question. She writes, Craig, I was contemplating what we were speaking about with people's stories. You know, I was telling her that it's important that we honor, that we validate our experience. And so there's this teaching in modern spirituality where you just let go of your story. But if you try to let go of a story before it's ready to be released, it can actually feel almost violent, you know, to your sense of self, to your humanity. And so she was saying, Craig, it occurred to me that what needs to fall away is not the story itself, which provides a valuable understanding of how we are specifically conditioned to suffer, yes. But what needs to fall away is our judgment about it. Yes, absolutely. This is so true. It's our judgment that needs to fall away. Judgment of our life, a judgment of our experience, a judgment of what happened to us. Whether it was something was unfair, was fair, or should have happened or not, we need to let go of this judgment. I'm experiencing the awareness that it is ultimately not possible for me to judge the fairness of existence because it extends so much further than I can see. That's really beautiful. Karma appears from here anyway, much more about simple cause and effect than any notion of justice. Yeah, our mind, our ego can get really hung up on justice. You know, I read this article earlier today, and it caught my attention because I was in the desert, and it was this article about this place. I can't even remember where it was. Maybe it was in Minnesota or actually North or South Dakota. And they found this piece of property that was, you know, some man's ranch, and there was all these fossilized remains, and it was a very interesting discovery. It was a place where, you know, there was this moment in history when a meteor hit the Earth, and it exploded, you know, into the atmosphere, and something happened with, you know, the explosion in the atmosphere. I guess it was rock or part of the meteor, where it exploded into these glass-like pieces. And then all of a sudden, all at once, all this glass like fragments, like a fragment grenade, like just immediately fell down to earth and pulverized like all of creation. And there was this discovery that happened, I guess this last year, where on this fellow's ranch, where there's all these fossils that are pulverized with these little bits of glass. And you see, like, just in a moment, the dinosaurs, the fish, in this, I think it was like a riverbed or something wild, were just pulverized. And when your mind thinks about it, just to imagine the immensity of what happened in that moment, of all of life, just ended just like that. The idea of judgment doesn't make sense when you step far enough back from life and you start to see life through God's eye, through God's mind. And for some reason on that day, Kali decided to be done with the dinosaurs, to end them. But if you notice, life did not stop, because here we are. Here we are. It continued forward in one form or another. And so is it just? Is it fair? Is it right? Is it wrong? It doesn't even make sense to think in those terms. And there's a great freedom that comes when we can just step back from our own life and just let go of justice, let go of fairness, and just see, yes, it's true this happened. Yes, it's true I suffered. What does this suffering within me need? Does it need to be ignored or denied? Or how does suffering actually heal? Suffering heals through love, through compassion. So the funny thing is the more you love your story, the more quickly it dissolves. The more you honor and validate that which you felt from a place of love, the more quickly it dissolves. So love dissolves judgment. It actually dissolves the very psychological program that judges. So the more fully you embrace something, the more quickly the judge and the critic actually dissolves. It's a very funny thing I discovered on the path. But sometimes if we try to transcend something, judgment can actually intensify. We can say, I don't like that. I want to transcend it. I want to get rid of it. I don't want to feel this. I want to repress it or transcend. But when you meet something fully with love, and you love it literally to death, it dissolves. It dissolves. It's quite healing. And so, yes, thank you, my friend from Australia. Again, all this wisdom is coming from the Sanghas. I appreciate you. Your divinity, your wisdom. And it's nice when we awaken to this together. And we see that this wisdom, it's not like it's Craig's wisdom or Adyashanti's wisdom or Eckhart Tolle or the great Amma, her wisdom. All of us, as we wake up to this truth within ourselves, we discover these universal truths. My teacher used to say this funny thing. He said, Craig, there's one human mind here on planet Earth. One human mind. And we all have it. And one divine mind. And we all have it. We all have it. So the question is are we awake to it? Okay. Here's something from Cindy. Cindy writes, accepting where I am presently opens and allows bit by bit that all is meant to be. Yes, Cindy, that's well said. That's beautiful said. Even my struggle, yes. And we're all struggling, Cindy. Life on planet Earth is not easy. It's not easy. My favorite advice from Thich Nhat Hanh is to say, there is little struggle I see. I see you and I am here for you. Yes. Yes, and see, this is an act of compassion. This is an act of love. I see you struggle. I see you heartache. I see you sadness. I see you fear. I see you anxiety, and I am here for you. I am here to love you. Yes, thank you so much, Cindy, for sharing. That's well said. Well said. Okay, let's see. Here's a question from Aaron. Is desire precisely the same as bliss, except seen from some kind of twisted, ignorant perspective? Could you talk about the roots of desire, not necessarily in terms of its relationship with suffering? I've heard enough Buddha Dharma about that. Thank you, Aaron, to clarify that. Does the death of ego imply the death of desire, or is desire more intrinsic to reality than ego is? Yeah, that's actually a great question. Does the death of ego imply the death of desire? So I look at two types of desire. So there's false desire, which the Buddha spoke extensively about. That's the Buddha Dharma, saying that desire was the root of ego and this and that. But really, if we look at what desire is the force of evolution, the force of life to create something beautiful. And so, let's go back to that geological story that I spoke about when this, we'll take it even further back. So once upon a time, there was nothing. And out of nothing arose all of life, all of creation. This arising of life is desire. Desire is this vast creative principle. And so there's two great principles here in the universe. There's vast spacious emptiness, and then there's this eternal force of creation. Desire is the force of creation, the force of life, giving birth. Out of nothing came something. So yes, desire is much more intrinsic than ego. So life, created all this, created planets and planets that grow life and dinosaurs, and then ended that, and then life continued out of its great desire to expand to greater complexity, greater closeness with truth. So if you look at what's happening with life, the manifest world is growing into the absolute world. And so we're chasing this. And so our human self is always a couple steps behind, sometimes 1,000 steps or 1,000,000 steps behind our divine self. But life is desiring to complete itself, to see itself, to experience itself in greater and greater ways. And by ways, I mean greater expressions of truth, of love, of bliss, of freedom. And so is desire precisely the same as bliss? I don't know what you mean by this, Aaron. Desire is, it's a movement toward bliss. But bliss, can be experienced as like, overwhelmingly euphoric. But bliss can also be experienced as the silent contentment. I was speaking with someone the other day about the work that I do. And oftentimes it's sitting with people in pain. And there's a silent contentment in the work that I do, knowing it's good. There's a sense of love there, a sense of freedom there. Yes, a silent experience of bliss, even when I'm sitting with someone in hell. But it's a lot more quiet than euphoria. I can also say last night, keep speaking about my experience that I had in the desert. I love the desert so much. It's one of my happy places. That and the ocean. It's so funny because one's really dry and one's really really wet. But I was just looking at the stars last night, I was just letting my head just kind of fall back. I started to fall into samadhi. And it's just wonderful to let go into that type of euphoria, feeling the absolute timeless nature and this incredible bliss, true Satchidananda. And my wife was in the tent, trying to put my 5-year-old to sleep, reading stories, and I had the night off, and so it was really, really easy for me. And I said, "What are you doing out there in the cold?" It's like I couldn't even have words to answer. Just giving myself permission to go completely blank, just explode into the hugeness of the sky. Have this, overwhelming euphoria just take over the body. The mind go absolutely. It's like beyond silent. It goes into the eternal space. And so much is possible for us. So much. And this is not just an experience for this silly guy, Craig. This is an experience for all of us to wake up to. We're not meant just to rush and to fight and to struggle in this world. We're meant to be free. Meant to be free. Okay, so there's one last question here. I'll see if I can do it before the end here. I think this is from Gabriel, I believe. Hello, Craig. I discovered you through YouTube. I've seen some of your videos. I'm reaching out to you because I'm going through a spiritual crisis. I've been having a feeling of a lot of fear and anxiety. At times it feels like I'm going to have an anxiety or panic attack. It's been difficult to sleep or to get anything done because I've been feeling so overwhelmed with these difficult feelings. What should I do? Should I seek a conventional psychotherapist? Would medication be advisable? So I always recommend people meet with a therapist or a counselor first. Of course, I'm trained in traditional Western psychotherapy and counseling because I personally had my own struggles with anxiety and panic. And so, yeah, I spent a lot of time meeting with counselors and therapists. I never took, medication because one, I'm just afraid of medication and all the side effects. If a pill says, it may cause you to commit suicide or want to commit suicide or have suicidal thoughts and they're using it for anxiety, I say that's a pill to avoid. That's me personally. Some people find them very helpful, but that's really a conversation you have, over a couple of hours with a good counselor or therapist. It's not something you just make real quick, that kind of decision. Yes, you should find some support, a good counselor, a good teacher, someone you trust. Yeah, and get some one-on-one attention. We all need this on the path. I have some friends who think that, like only crazy people should go to a therapist. But to me, it's going to a therapist, like doing a good course of therapy, like spending a year in therapy, is a radically healing thing to do. You'll discover so much about yourself, so much about your shadows, about where you struggle, where your shortcomings are, and how to embody your highest, your truth, your innate wisdom, your innate strength. I find it so helpful to meet with someone to meet with both as a counselor and a teacher, or one and the same if you find someone who does both. And so Gabriel, I believe this is from Gabriel, forgive me if it's not, but in regards to working with panic, the big thing is not to believe the thoughts in your head. Unless you are in physical danger, then yes, run or fight or get out of that situation. But to breathe deeply into the panic, to meet it with love, to practice yoga and mindfulness, to learn how to self-soothe the panic and heal the body. Sometimes this means meeting with a psychotherapist. Sometimes it means just learning to love yourself or doing yoga and doing it every day. Sometimes it means learning to meditate, learning to let go. Sometimes it means visiting with a body worker, a chiropractor, healers. I did all these things. I also dedicated 20 years of my life to my teacher to heal my own anxiety and fear. And so I encourage you to get some support, my friend. It's a good thing. So thank you all for joining me this week. Once again, I'm going to invite you all to my retreat coming up here this April 25th in San Diego. Look forward to seeing some of you there. I invite you to join me, join the Sangha Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Mountain Time for our weekly meditation group, which is just so wonderful to meet in this way. And I want to thank you all also for the generous donations. And if you want to make a donation or come to the retreat or register for the Wednesday night meditation class, just visit craigholliday.com. My heart is in absolute love with you all. May peace be with you. You are the highest. You are God in human form. Never be fooled that you are anything less. I'll leave you with this. Good night.